Hello, and welcome back to Parley. This prompt was written by vampbug. Hope you'll enjoy listening. It's about reusable limited Magic the Gathering. We're going to make some jumpstart packs. Vamper begins, ahoy Captain, I've been looking into making a cube, basically like a custom set of Magic the Gathering cards designed to be drafted. Pick one from a group, pass it around the table. You get another pack of them, pick one and pass it around the table. And you use that to make decks and play on the spot. The idea of making a cube or like any of these custom limited things in Magic is to reuse them. So you don't need to buy product and to put the stuff you like in them. It's your game, put the stuff you like in it. So a cube, a very curated kind of custom draft set for Magic. Very fun way to play. But Vamper says, I've stalled on that until I settle on or make up a satisfying 2-player draft format. I actually might have something for you. We'll talk about it at the end. In a way of procrastinating that, I've made half a dozen custom jumpstart packs, and I'd like to get your eyes on some of them. I'm planning to make 2 packs of each color with a unifying mechanical theme. They will all have hard-coded human synergy. At least 1 card per pack will reference the human creature type, and at least a couple creatures will be human. That theme is in order to make tribal, human creature type packs more broad and synergistic regardless of what other colors you end up with. Humans are the most populated creature type in Magic and thus span all 5 colors in good numbers. Cool, and then you have links to a few packs you want to show, which I will open up in just a minute. So what are these? What is the format of this thing that's being made? You're making jumpstart style limited packs. So rather than just opening up a bunch of booster packs or custom booster packs on the spot, and that's your pool of cards, or drafting, opening up packs or custom packs and then passing them around the table after picking a card, 2 very common ways to play limited Magic the Gathering where you don't bring a deck, you kind of make a deck on the spot. You're doing jumpstart format Magic the Gathering. Credit where credit's due, this is a Wizards of the Coast creation. It's a product they released, but it's a cool idea, and it's kind of easier to make custom packs in a way. There's like an interesting thing about that, so we'll get into that maybe. The idea is that there are packs in the pool again, but you don't just open a bunch and that's what you have, or pass them around the table necessarily. Each pack is half of a complete deck. Basically, usually half of a complete deck. So in this case, these packs are going to be 20 cards. They'll all be 1 color. That's pretty common, but you could do it other ways. We won't touch on that here. And the idea is that you will combine 2 of them, possibly with some kind of selection process, like making sure you don't get the same color twice, so the decks will be 2 color, or allowing players to pick, like draft, which whole deck packs they want. So maybe what each of the packs is and they're all laid out on a table, and players in order, choose 1 pack that's half their deck. Next player chooses half their deck. Another player chooses half their deck, etc. Or if it's just 2 of you, then 1, 2, 3, 4, you've got 2 complete decks. Whatever selection process, and then you just combine the 2 packs and off you go. It's nice for them to be single color because then you can easily separate them. You can just take the 2 decks apart, which cards go in which one because they are that color, and then you're ready to go again. We may get back to that later as well. You could also, I've heard of people putting like a very subtle sticker or like a little piece of paper marker inside of the sleeve for each pack so that it's easy to tell them apart if you don't want to stick to just 1 color. But Vamper has here, so no big deal. And those are the packs we're going to look at. So this is an interesting kind of subset of making a cube or making your own custom set. You have created kind of a format, right? Like where constructed Magic is sort of typical Magic, some assembly required. You need to pick a format to play, to be playing the game, so people know what cards are allowed, or decks aren't hilariously mismatched to the point of there not even being a game of Magic. That might seem weird to people who don't play Magic, but that really is a problem you would have. Just like in that situation, you're kind of deciding on a format here. What cards exist? What cards will your opponent have? What types of removal is there? How good are creatures in this format, for example? All choices you could make. And I think in this particular example, you've made a choice that this format is going to be rather creature focused. Like the most of these 3 packs anyway, and probably most of the packs, because you said human themed, are going to be creature heavy. We're going to be fighting on the ground, turn some creatures sideways and put some damage on the stack, you nerd. I have heard it said. And that's what we're going to do here. So even though we only have 3 packs, of the, you said 2 of each color, so 10 that will be in the environment, we can infer some things. We'll need to infer some things about what the other packs will be like. I think you'll get what I mean pretty quickly. Let's get started. Here we go. So 3 packs, they all have a kind of stated theme. So this is a heroic, or whenever you cast a spell that targets this themed pack. This is a monster human pack. This was a mechanic from Ixalan. The idea is that some cards will care about human and non-human, like kind of pairs of man and beast, if you want. Very strange, but I actually think kind of cool mechanic. So this pack is sort of doing that kind of thing. And then this is a giant human themed pack, not large humans, the giant creature type, and also humans. There's a surprising amount of like sort of weird synergy between the two. And obviously thematically, like that's just kind of cool. A quick note on that, actually, since we're here, I detect a medium amount of interest in theme in these packs, which I think is really cool. So I am going to be assuming that you would like that respected. I'll try to just explain whenever I do that, and you can decide for yourself. But I think it's kind of cool. For example, it's pretty obvious to use a lot of changelings. The way you've set things up. Already 2 of our 3 packs heavily emphasize a creature type other than human, and the changeling ability makes a creature, or a card, but usually a creature, every creature type at all times. So by putting a changeling in this pack, for example, we can kind of bridge the giant and human parts of the pack together. We have a card that is a giant and a human, which is very good indeed, because we do not have very much space to put cards that are not a giant or a human. You have 20 cards, and almost half of it, a little more than a third of it, has to be land. So, I mean, it's going to be like 7 to 10 creatures most of the time. That's all you get. Putting 2 creature types in there, that's quite hard. More about that later, too. But anyway, very cool. So I am going to be kind of inferring some things about how you feel about that, because you have restricted that fairly heavily, especially in a few cases where it would have been like potentially pretty good. Like I think the idea of including more changeling stuff in this pack in particular. Ruined Stalactite is a card that came to mind. That is a cheap equipment that can be equipped to a creature, and then it makes them all creature types while they're holding it. That might be a kind of a theme lose. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to go too far on that. It kind of seems like you're not doing that, and I'm kind of into it. In fact, let's go ahead and start with this pack. So we'll talk about each of the 3, and then I'll sort of review the group as a whole. And I also have some closing thoughts about 2-player drafting. And I was delighted to see this parlay because I was just doing the exact same thing, no joke, looking into making a cube for drafting Magic the Gathering, but stalled on it until I settle on or make up a satisfying 2-player draft format. That is exactly me as of like 1 week ago. So I totally get it. And I know that you are probably aware, Vamper, that I also have a set of jumpstart packs that I've been interested in for a while, but I've been kind of neglecting for a bit. They're so far not very different from the original Jumpstart packs. So let's just break down this pack first, and there's going to be some similarities in how you've structured them between packs. So each pack has, I think, the same amount of land. They each have 8, and then it's 7 mountains and the thriving land of that pack's color. So these were introduced with the official Wizards of the Coast Jumpstart product. They are lands that come into play tapped. They tap for 1 mana of the color they are, so this is the red one, for example. But then as they enter the battle, you can pick another color, and they can also tap for that color. So they're lands that tap for 2 different colors, and one of them is set, but the other one you can choose. They're like flexible 2-color lands, but they come into play tapped. I think these are very smart. They make it much more likely that your mana base will be good. They let you include cards in each pack that will tap for mana of your other pack's color without knowing what that other color is. Very smart indeed. So yeah, I think these are really cool. Just a quick note on lands. I really like the modal double-faced cards for Jumpstart. The idea is that these have, we can pull one up, like 2 sides. So here maybe we'll do... well, I'll just use Shatter Skull Smashing, but I don't think you should put this in. And one side of the card is a spell. So that doesn't fit on the screen well, but you can see it here. sort of. My camera position is a bit awkward for this. One side of the card is a spell, and if you flip it over, the other side is a land, usually a land that taps for a single color and comes into play tapped, meaning it's a rather inferior land, but the idea is that these allow you to increase the number of playable spells and the number of playable lands in a very small amount of space. To make it does a few things. So it would allow you to make the packs modulate how many lands they have without you editing them. For example, maybe a pack wants to have more land. Maybe it's more of like a ramp or like a big creature pack. This pack is a good example. This booster pack has a fairly high top end. There are some 6 mana dudes in here. There is a 5 mana card and 2 6 mana cards, which is a lot bigger mana than most of the other packs, the ones that you showed me anyway. It doesn't mean you're going to spend more mana necessarily, but you certainly wouldn't mind having a little more land, maybe. Maybe your other pack has a lot more land. Well, if you have those modal double-faced cards, you can kind of change how many lands are in each pack. You can play them as a land if you desperately need them in that context, or not if you don't. And kind of like thriving lands, they also, by including them, you allow packs to flex to that. Like imagine you get this pack, and then a pack that is pretty lean, like it's low to the ground, you don't need that much land. Well, they both have a modal double-faced card, so you can play both of them as lands more often when you play, to increase the likelihood that you get to the top end for this pack, which needs it, even though the other pack, which was more lean on land, didn't know you were going to need additional lands, without changing what's in the packs, and have it still work. Now, obviously, the modal double-faced cards with a land on the back just make it more likely you won't get mana screwed as well. And their main drawback is that they are a little bit slow, but this format is a little bit slow. You're making, like a lot of people have, like low to medium power jumpstart packs, which is, let's say medium power, which is pretty common and means that a land coming into play tapped now and again is not that bad. That's not disastrous at this power level of Magic play. So I personally think including one modal double-faced with a land on the back is a fun way to go. Now, one of the problems with doing that is that it is very difficult to find enough that are actually good, that are not like really bad, basically. Really bad, like they hardly do anything. Some colors, it's pretty good. Like green has a few that are very good. There's really no problem. But then other colors, it's not as good. Anyway, we won't get into it now. But because you have very few packs, I reckon it's doable, potentially. In fact, you kind of inspired me to do a set myself that's like, just do less packs, and then it would be way easier. Anyway, they could have the same card, but maybe that's not as fun. So those are just some high-level thoughts about each of the packs. I think the Thriving lands are awesome. I think same amount of land in each pack is kind of useful in a way. You could maybe get the best of both worlds by also including modal double-faced cards. Okay, let's get into this specific pack. That was almost all of the rambling I wanted to do about like jumpstart stuff in general, so forgive me for putting that at the beginning. I felt like it was better to do that earlier. Another sub-theme of these packs is treasure. So artifacts are pretty abundant. This pack has a tiny little artifact sub-theme. A few of the cards have improvise, which means you can tap artifacts to pay for one colorless mana. The treasure tokens would normally be exploded to give you a mana. This lets you just tap them and still keep them on the field to pay for a few of the creatures. Particularly, in fact, I think it's only 2. It's just Enraged Giant and Steamworks Brawler, but 2 decent-sized bombs for the pack. And being able to get them a little quicker or play things a little faster once you get going is nice here. This pack is probably going to start pretty slow. It doesn't have much action for the first like probably 3 or 4 turns, except for Crimson Mage, which isn't a really interesting card in here. I feel like this is maybe really good in a format that is a kind of slow like this, though. One of this pack's plays is to go Giant Harbinger. You search your library for a giant card, put it on top of your library, and then one of the 3 choices you have is Enraged Giant, Improvise, and then it's a 4/4 with Trample and Haste. It costs a lot of mana, but it has Improvise, so hopefully it'll come out a little fast. You already have, like, one of the creatures you would be most likely to want to give Haste already has Haste. That's where I was going with that. But Crimson Mage activating is still good on Titan of Eternal Fire. Any of the humans, once you have Titan of Eternal Fire, because then they can tap right away to do 1 damage to any target. And you still have some big bodies that it's good if they have haste, but just not amazing. I think Crimson Mage is a little weak in here. Let's talk about Giant Harbinger a little more. So this pack is doing something challenging with this amount of space. You're trying to make a pack that has 2 creature type focuses inside of it. This is the only card that synergizes with giants, and this is the only card that synergizes with humans. I'm not saying that's bad. There's 1 or 2 creature type enablers in the pack, not the end of the world or anything. But Giant Harbinger has 3 targets, and I wanted to talk about that a little more. So it can get Titan of Eternal Fire. The main thing with this is that it lets humans pay 1 red mana and tap to do 1 damage to any target. This is really, really strong, in my opinion. Very, very powerful. If your opponent doesn't immediately shut this off, and the type of removal you've been including makes me think they will have trouble shutting it off quickly, means that this will probably pretty quickly machine gun down your opponent's entire board, and then they will very quickly die if they don't deal with it. Now, it's a lot of mana. I mean, if you play Giant Harbinger into this, that's 9... That's 11, I can count, mana before you've tapped for any of the abilities. So maybe it's okay. It's a little slow. I think this is really cool. Don't get me wrong. That's one of the things you can go for. You need damage right away. You can instead use Harbinger to tutor for Enraged Giant. We talked about him before. Just a trample haste dude. 4/4 trample and haste. Not that bad. And then Giant Harbinger can also get your Bloodrine Pretender. English. This is a changeling, so it counts as a giant and a human. You pick a creature type. When another creature of that type enters the battlefield, you could put a 1/1 counter on this, not on the creature that came into play. So this is an interesting one. I'm not 100% sold on this in here. There's a couple of reasons. Okay, so the first one is that it does sort of break the theme / if you are willing to include changelings, I would include others, I guess. I'm kind of interested in the champion changeling in red in this pack. It's like a 4 mana 5/3 with haste. I think I'm remembering this correctly. And it has champion a creature. You basically put it on top of a creature, it fights, and then if it dies, that creature comes back, I think is how they work. And it's a changeling. So it would give you another haste dude. I'm kind of not that into Crimson Mage too. And it would also let you reactivate some enters the battlefield effects, like the one from Giant Harbinger and Gear per Gearcrafter, though we'll talk about that in a sec too. So sort of interested in the possibility of going for a different changeling card is what I was getting at. The second thing is that this gets bigger as you play creatures of the chosen type, but if that's anything other than human, you're very unlikely to trigger this many times. And the pack just has some strong things to be doing, like medium. All it does is give you a medium-sized body with no abilities. I just feel like that isn't that exciting compared to the other stuff this pack can be doing. Finally, it's an artifact, which I like because you kind of care about that for a few other mechanics in the pack, like improvise. It can trigger improvise. But I don't know, like I don't see wanting to tutor for this because you want a human. You have Titan of Eternal Fire and Giant Harbinger, and you tutor for this so you have a human. I kind of wish there were just more humans, I guess is sort of my feeling. So I don't know. It's a really interesting choice. In some ways, it does a lot of things at once, but I'm also not the biggest fan. I feel like you lose some, and you may or may not care, kind of purity of purpose, not including changelings, and or if you will include changelings, I might just include another changeling. I don't think that the creature type effect is good if it isn't human, and at that point I might just prefer a card with human synergy, but it probably wouldn't be an artifact, and it wouldn't be a giant, which means you can't tutor for it with Giant Harbinger. I see why it's in there. I'm not saying you should remove this, it's bad. I'm not going to say that throughout this whole video, that's not useful. Just that I want to put pressure on it as a choice. If you're excited about the fact that with another pack, it's going to let you activate human synergies and use Giant Harbinger to put down something that triggers human synergy stuff, cool. Like I think that's cool. I don't think that's a bad idea. I just wanted to point out that even if you do that, all it does is give you a medium-sized body with no abilities, which this pack already has a lot of. Well, actually, they have a lot of abilities. So, yeah. A quick note, it does make you pick a creature type that will beef it up, but it itself is always every creature type. So another benefit of this is, I misspoke earlier, there's one more card that mentions giants. It enables squash with a low cost. Giants, as you might expect, well, there aren't very many low mana cost giants. This spell is 2 mana to do 6 damage to a creature or planeswalker at instant speed if you control a giant. That's cracked. Whoa. Yikes. So it's really good if you have a giant in play, but it's hard to do that early. So I don't know. I sort of don't want you to be able to play this early. I feel like that's very strong. In this format, this will is like one of the pure kill spells, probably. That's just very strong, but interesting. I think this card is neat. I wanted to briefly comment on Gear per Gear Crafter. This is a personal aesthetic thing. You're so close to not needing tokens specific to each pack. I really like that you did treasure as a theme among the packs. It's so easy because there's so many friggin' treasure cards, and the treasures can tap for 1 mana of any color. This means that all of the packs can have like a little bit more of a way to generate like rainbow colors of mana. Super good tip. I'm probably going to do that myself. And you do need tokens, but all the packs use treasure. A lot of them use it. So you could just have treasure tokens at the table. It's not the same as needing a Thopter one time for this one card, and it's not even a particularly good card. It just gives you another artifact, potentially. I like the artifact theme. I'm just putting pressure on, is there a way to do it with a more exciting card and or that doesn't like make you have to have the Thopter token for only that? You don't care, that only reinforces this card being a good choice. And if you do care, then yeah, that's my thought. Something that makes treasure, I can't remember anything off the top of my head, but there's so many humans. Like, it almost feels like you could just pick a human that has any arbitrary abilities. Just a few more closing thoughts. I think Titan's strength is deceptively really strong in this context. This is 3/1 until end of turn, and you scry 1 for 1 mana at instant speed. There is a good amount of evasion or trample in this pack, so you will likely be able to use this to do 3 damage at instant speed for 1 mana. You're pretty close to being able to just crack someone in half. They lose half their health in basically one swing out of nowhere. I'm not sure that's bad. I'm just saying I think this is pretty strong in the context of this pack. It's a little worse than it would otherwise be because you don't have like a lot of the smaller bodies have very low toughness, so they probably won't survive the exchange. In some ways, I think this is good. You may know there is a card that is 1 red mana for 3/3 until end of turn, basically giant growth, but in red, and that would be very strong indeed in this pack. Probably not a good idea in my opinion. So anyway, just the thought. I liked these two. I don't have anything to say about these. A burn spell of like a weak magnitude, and then you get a treasure, I actually think is a pretty good fit. I really like the treasure generation as a theme overall, and then it lets you do like a mini artifact theme for this pack. Like, that's really cool. And it's very elegant. You don't really have to do anything to enable that, which I like. The pick, I didn't have anything to say about it. I think this is cool. It's not a half bad card. A creature gets 1/1, and when it attacks, you get the treasure, not when it connects. Good, no real notes. I'm just a little worried that it doesn't have enough good targets. / the best target by far in this pack is Gear per Gear Crafter's Thopter token, which, yeah, anyway, that's a whole thing. But I like the idea of an equipment. I was kind of into Rune Stalactite, but there's that conflict of like the artifact itself isn't a changeling, so you can't use Giant Harbinger to get an artifact, but do you want to do that? Yabba dabba dabba da. Metalcraft sub-theme for all of the packs? Let's not do that. Moving on. Pack number 2 that we're going to talk about anyway. This is the human non-human theme pack. So we're going to go over this pack a little bit because a lot of the particular cards, it's not as simple as the other one to explain, I think. So we have basically like just random beasts. You picked like really weird creature types, which I think is really fun. This is a Brushwag, whatever the heck that is. It's a 1/1 with trample, and you can pay 4 to make it get +3/+3. This is pretty sick. This pack has a few mana sinks. Another one is Hornbash Mentor. It's a 3/3 for 3, already very good in this environment, I'll point out. When it enters the battlefield, you put a trample counter, permanently give trample to a non-human you control. And for 3 mana and tap, you can put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with trample. This has a sub-theme of trample. I really like all the sub-themes, by the way. You really did a good job elegantly weaving together quite a lot of themes into very few cards. And we'll get back to that at the end. Okay, Ignoble Hierarch and Noble Hierarch. These are both 1 mana 0/1s with Exalted, so they give another creature or themselves attacking alone +1/+1. And they tap for 3 colors of mana. They both tap for green, and then they tap for black and red or white and blue, respectively. These are a little awkward for a lot of reasons. This is my least favorite thing about these packs. They're clever because Noble Hierarch is a human and Ignoble Hierarch is a non-human, so it's kind of elegant. And they're different colors. They tap for different colors, but the pack contains one of them at least that will tap for the color that your other pack uses, right? So let's say you have red as your other pack alongside this. You always, no matter what the other pack's color is, you have exactly one of the two tapping for one other relevant color. That's not so bad. It'll either be Ignoble Hierarch or Noble Hierarch. So even though it seems weird, they're like a rainbow of colors, I actually think that's surprisingly elegant in practice. But they are very powerful. Very, very powerful in my opinion. A couple of things. The first one is that the ramp benefits almost every pack's game plan at this level of play. What I mean by that is that at a low to medium power level, like a lot of the cards we've been looking at, think of the last pack with the Giants and Humans, ramp is, I would propose, essentially the best thing. Like if you can ramp your mana somewhat reliably on turn 1, you will probably win most of these games, all things being equal. And these are, of course, good for the same reason they are in other kinds of Magic. They ramp you, but then they also let you push some damage. They ramp you into a creature, big thing on turn 2 or 3, and then when that attacks, they even give you more damage, almost like they were an offensive creature as well. That's just very strong, and you get to have 2 of them too, so it's somewhat consistent as well. It makes the mana better. Might even be fixing your mana. I just think these are very powerful in the context of these packs overall. And this pack is already quite strong. It's got a lot of trample. It has big creatures. It has mana sinks. It has a relatively low curve. You can play stuff early, but it's still a relevant threat. Like, this is already a really strong pack. And then it has some amazing, very powerful cards in it. It's got a few more we're going to get to in a minute too. Jewel Thief, it's a 3/3 for 3 with Vigilance and Trample that gives you a treasure token when it comes into play. I had to read this card like 3 times because it sounds fake and overpowered. It's a 3/3 for functionally 2 mana, and it fixes your mana a little, that has Vigilance and Trample. If it was a 3/3 for 2 with Vigilance and Trample, that would be stacked. It is technically 3 mana, so you have to wait till turn 3 maybe. But this pack has 3 1-mana plays, and you do get to fix your mana. I think this is crazy. Like, this is a common? What the heck is going on with Magic nowadays? I had not seen this card before. It was printed relatively recently, I see. This is very strong. Anyway, Sabertooth Mauler, pretty straightforward. One of the most chill things in this pack, but it's still pretty good. Beginning of your end step, if something's died, you put a 1/1 counter on this and untap it. It's a 3/3 for 4 mana. It's still really good, though. It doesn't have trample. Do note that almost everything else does. Giving things trample, there's actually not a lot of targets for that. You could put it on the Ignoble Hierarch or the Noble Hierarch, and you could put it on this, but that's pretty much it. I don't know if that's good or bad. You could put it on other stuff. Your other pack will have lots of things that don't have trample. I guess that makes more sense, yep. And this is a 2/1 with trample with landfall to get a 1/1 counter. Again, I just think these are very, very, very strong. Very powerful cards. And there are 2 other really good cards in here. Ram Through, you get removal that lets you push damage to the face. Creature just has to have trample, and they basically all do. And then Survivor's Bond, you get 2 creatures back from your graveyard as long as you have a human and a non-human to target. And even then, 1 back from the graveyard for 2 mana is fine. A lot of these packs do have like key cards. As much as there isn't a single card that is the strongest card or way stronger, they do often have a few key cards. Think of the Giant pack and the Titan of Fire, what makes the humans do fire damage. That would be a good target for this. Paying 2 mana to get that back, and your opponent has to find a way to kill it again, they'll probably fail and you will win. I think this is very strong, even with only 1 target, and it lets you get 2 cards potentially. It's really good. There's some card draw. You got artifact and enchantment removal, which doesn't look like it has many targets I was concerned about. You cannot cast this without a target, so I'm a little worried that this might not be that good in your format. You could target a treasure token, but I just don't think that does that much. So I'm sort of not sold on Crack Open. Karmetra's Favor, a little bit more ramp, color fixing, you draw a card. This is like nothing fancy, but I think it is good. It is made a little bit less powerful in this pack, even though I said the thing about ramp and it draws you a card and it's only 2 mana, because in this pack there are not very many good targets. A lot of them either already tap for mana or you would want to be swinging with. So I don't think that's bad. I think it's good in the context of this pack. It makes it weaker. So a thought. It's also part of this pack's multicolor theme. You have Infused with the Elements. The creature gets bigger based on how many colors of mana you spend to pay this. This is another thing that the Hierarchs are doing, and the treasure tokens, and Karametra's Favor. This pack is stacked. I feel like this is really, really good. This would beat some standard decks with a good draw. This is very, very powerful. Oh, it gets Trample as well. Yeah. I think this is very strong. Having them be strong and exciting is good. I think that this one is a little bit too close to being good with everything. Like you can't possibly make a pack that this won't synergize with as if it was made to work with it. So I'm a little worried about the power level of this one. But in many cases, you could bring it down by just lowering the card quality. For example, making the Hierarchs into weaker mana dorks. Even the Don't have Exalted could be enough. Making Karametra's Favor into the same thing, because I actually think it's a good fit. Making some of those other cards weaker would also make Survivor's Bond a little weaker. You might be able to find this at a higher mana cost too, something somewhat similar. There's lots of return card from graveyard to hand in green, but this is creatures. It's limited to creatures, but in this format, that's not much of a limitation. The creature quality is off the rails in this pack. It's crazy. These creatures are really good. I still don't believe Jewel Thief is a real card. Like, what? Am I reading this wrong or something? Like, who makes this card? It's insane. I feel like this alone would beat half these packs on a bad draw, or if they get a bad draw. That's crazy. Anyway, okay, final pack. And by the way, I'm being very critical. Not because I think you're an idiot and these are bad packs. I probably don't have to say that. You've asked many Parley over the years. But just to clarify that you're looking for feedback. So I'm looking for things to say, oh, maybe this could be better. What do you think about this? Challenging the packs so you can decide if you like how they are. My high level feedback is I think they're cool. I'm excited about them because I want to make my own after seeing this. Okay, the Heroic pack. This one, the heroic ability is when you target the thing with a spell, when you cast a spell that targets it, you trigger an effect. This pack is a little worrisome to me because I don't think it has a clear win condition, but it seems like it could get really swingy depending on what the other pack is. I'll show you what I mean. So a lot of the cards in here it's got a lot of card draw. It's got pretty good sustain, some great card advantage engines, or things that replace themselves. Really good bomb as well. 4/4 for 4 with trample, and when you cast a spell that targets it, you draw a card. Now you may not be able to target it that often. This pack does do a pretty good job with having a number of things that target possibly multiple creatures. I also thought that Scale the Heights was very clever. You basically put Explore in the pack, but you found one that targets creatures as well. Very clever. This is an incredibly strong card in this pack, in my opinion. Really good. Explore would have been good. This is probably better in context. So yeah, this is really good. It has Trample. Now, a lot of the other big things in here do not have Trample. They don't have like a way to get over the enemy. You can make big dudes. You've got quite a few that are More or less when you target this, it's going to get bigger, but don't have any abilities. So Hero of Lena Tower, Staunch-Hearted Warrior, Mild-Mannered Librarian, these are basically all, this will be a large body, eventually, or, it comes down early enough and then it gets bigger over time, but with no abilities. And this pack doesn't really have a way to help them get through. I'm not necessarily saying that's bad, but my point is, imagine if this pack was paired with this trample pack, and then imagine it was paired with this giant pack. The trample pack would make this pack way stronger, I think. Getting one of these bodies to just gain trample would possibly win you the game on the spot, whereas the giant pack would, it's not bad. They have various synergies buffing up your big giants, for example, or just getting a benefit from having a big body attacking and then a body you can buff attacking. That's good and all. At the same time, I feel like if this pack gets given evasion, it's going to be really broken, and if it doesn't, then it's not bad, but doesn't really have any game plan of its own. It does have a lot of card draw, I noticed. It has better sustain, like better card advantage generation than the other packs did. But we're only seeing 3. I'm not sure if I'm overreacting about that. Scale the Heights, again, this will often draw you 2 cards in this deck, or draw you a card and give you an effect pretty close to drawing a second card. And it also lets you play another land, it ramps you, and it gives you more life. Warrior's Lesson, I think a decent amount of the time this will just replace itself, and you can probably get in there to draw 2 cards a good amount of the time. This has a number of small bodies, and then a few of the other packs do, but it depends if they have the small bodies. It's got okay removal. I think Aggressive Urge is a little tricky in here. 1/1 is just so weak, but because many of the things it would target, you either get more than 1/1, they trigger Heroic and get bigger, or you draw more than 1 card, because when you target them, they draw a card. I feel like this is actually pretty good in context. This is a great example of a card that it's really bad if you put it in some random pack, but it's really good in this pack. So in theory, I kind of like that. Making the cards feel like they have more synergy within the pack and are kind of whatever otherwise definitely appeals to me. But overall, I was a little iffy on this pack. I felt like it was going to be really swingy depending on what it was paired with. Now again, you have a very small format, right? Like it's only 10 packs, and it won't be with the other green pack as well, if you choose to enforce that rule. So there's only 8 other packs it could be with. You could just make it so it's reliably, consistently a power level, no matter what pack it's paired with. That's a manageable task with only 8 possible pairing points. This is number 9, and the other green pack is number 10. So I'm not saying that's necessarily the end of the world, but it was something that went off in my head. I took a lot of notes, but a lot of them just came back as I was talking about them, because I got very excited about this subject. Yes, I do have a few more things, though. One of them is I wanted to suggest potentially making the packs bigger. This came to me with the giant pack, but the idea is that the amount of space makes it very difficult to fit in like anything other than humans, basically, in many cases. Now, of course, it will be with another pack full of humans, but the point is that the card density, letting you include a few things that are not humans, but still having it be the most creatures you draw are humans, or if you get a human payoff, you're likely to actually have like 1 or 2 humans that can benefit from it, seems valuable to me. Now, you might not want that, but I wanted to suggest considering making 30 card packs, so they combine into 60 card decks instead. It would benefit the giant pack the most of these, but I also think you can see the benefits if you put it in the monster pack, the human, non-human, like trample themed pack. You can see how it would benefit in there as well. There are a few other benefits. It would make it easier to put modal double-faced card lands in the packs if you're interested in that idea. It would make it a little bit easier to put things that are tutors in the pack while having a reasonable number of targets. Again, the giant Harbinger example. But there are plenty of other good tutors relevant to these subjects, I'm sure you know. It would kind of water down the power level of some of the cards, though I don't love that approach. For example, if the pack with 2 hierarchs in it was bigger, you would get 1 or 2 of them less often, obviously. But that just makes it more swingy, which maybe isn't a benefit. but I was suggesting removing those anyway. So you can decide what you think about that. I think that may overall be a reason not to do it, but just something to think about. Yeah, I don't know. You could make more space if you wanted to. That was where it was going overall. There are a few themes that this is not really like advice or critique. It's just I'm excited. The changeling spells that give a creature all creature types or remove creature types could be uniquely fun in here. There could be some interesting plays, and those cards are already of like an only medium power level. So I kind of like the idea of including them here. Like they might fit really nicely. They're not that good, but they're not unplayably bad. And so this could be a really good format for them. They interact with the gimmick of the packs, the sort of creature type thing, humans and sometimes other creature types. But they also are not too strong, not too weak. They feel around the same power level as most of these packs. I think that's cool. Or you could have a pack where that was just the theme. I think blue comes to mind. Wings of Velasvel and Ego Erasure are two blue changeling spells, one of which gives a creature all creature types and flying, makes it a 4/4. And another of which removes all creature types from all of your opponent's creatures, I think, and gives them all -2 power till the end of the turn. Those could be pretty fun. You could do a whole theme like that. That's just like a changeling or creature type erasing pack or something. I don't know. Anyway, gene splicing pack. I don't know. There's some weird stuff you could do there. Get one of those cards that gives your creatures a creature type universally as well, and put in a bunch of weird random creature type payoffs in there. I don't know. Maybe that's weird. But a gene splicer pack sounds kind of fun for blue. Let's see what I got. Oh, if you wanted to run stronger stuff, I wanted to suggest that the monster pack inspired me to do this. Not having a relevant creature type or not being human or a relevant creature type for that pack makes a card significantly weaker in this set of cards. So you could consider pushing the cards included like that, but the human non-human pack breaks that a little bit because it doesn't care what creature type the creature has as long as it isn't human for those effects. Not that many cards in the pack actually do that, so I guess that's not the end of the world. But I guess I'm thinking of like Jewel Thief. That card is pretty pushed compared to other cards in these packs, and it isn't a human, but because the theme of the pack is like non-humans, I don't know, it's not a very big theme. I'm overreacting a little, but it was a thought I had. Bigger packs, maybe. Changeling discussion, maybe. And then the final thing was more creatures that have spell-like effects. It seems like another thing that would give these packs more space is to avoid any spell that doesn't need to be a spell. So like if you can get the effect on a creature, I feel like it's good to get it on a creature. For example, I'm finding myself thinking I like the human non-human theme as in theory, but Survivor's Bond instead being Eternal Witness. It's just a body that also gives you back a card from your graveyard. In some ways it's more powerful, but it also is more creatures. Now Eternal Witness is an elf, if I remember correctly, but I'm not remembering correctly, and it's totally a human, isn't it? As soon as I said it's an elf, my brain went, no, it's not. It is in fact a human shaman. So go figure about that. I think having more bodies helps make it so more of the human synergy will work, even if you do weird things with creature types. And I think that sounds cool. It might also lower the power level of things a little, which I don't think is good or bad. That's just something to think about. But it's fun to have instants. I thought it was nice that you tried to make sure that there were a few instant speed spells in each of the 3 packs. Even though there's very little space, you really put in some work to make sure that was the case. It looks like you may have had a theme on deciding that there's 7 creatures in each pack as well. I thought that was kind of interesting. I noticed that, but I wasn't sure if that was intentional or just vaguely intentional. Like there should be a good amount of creatures. It's a creature themed synergy thing. A lot of your spells that are not creatures require a creature to do anything. So I actually wondered if maybe this is too few creatures in some cases, because many of these spells don't work unless you have a creature to target. Finally, I was a little bit interested in more sticky creatures, like weaker but stickier creatures, like a 1/1 that dies and then you get a 1/1 for 2 mana. There's a few cards that do that, something like that. Seems kind of bad in this format, but it means that you can have small creatures that will stick instead of just getting eaten by large creatures. There's very little non-single target removal, so letting small creatures have more of a chance was something that came to mind. At the same time, the hierarchs came to me as kind of a problem because there's very little non-single target removal. Needing to use an entire, your one copy of Squash in the giant pack just to kill the hierarch if you want to kill it is very punishing. So the small creature thing, more small creatures that are like weaker but maybe stickier seemed like maybe good. So it's not as much pressure to actually use a kill spell on them because you have so few, but they still stick around a little bit, like they can still do something and fight. It depends what kind of format you want, but that just came to mind. This was a lot of fun. I said at the beginning that I've been looking at ways to draft with 2 people myself. Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to have 8 people together. I don't even know if I like 8 people, man. I don't think I have 8 people that I like, let alone to play Magic with, and they definitely don't play Magic, Yeah, all of you, but it's a different situation. We're more like colleagues, friends that I would meet up with in person and play Magic with. I don't even want to have 8 of those. It's going to be 2, maybe 4 people. So I looked into it a little bit. I found an article through many articles that I looked at where somebody had a method in mind that replicated a few of the things that are interesting to me about drafting. One of which is like having some hidden information, but also a good amount of known or reasonably inferable information. And I found something that I thought was cool. So I'm going to tell you the name the person gives for it and the name of the article, and you can look it up if you'd like. You should be able to find it real quick with just the search. The format is called Tuberts, or is that what the drafting format is called? Tuberts? Or is that just what his cube is called? Anyway, the article is called The Proper Way to Do 2-Player Cube Draft, which is a pretentious title, but the article is not pretentious, in my opinion. I think that attitude is it's just clickbait. Don't get scared off by that snobby sounding article title. The basic premise is that you divide the packs much like you normally would, but then you take 2 cards at a time, or like the first person takes 1 card, second person takes 2, third person takes 2, and then some amount of the cards are then not taken. So you don't necessarily know what was left each time. This lets you gain information because you get to see your opponent's picks, but you don't get to see all of their picks or like know that the remainder of the cards are with them. There's some kind of unknown stuff, which I think is appealing and manages power level a little bit. I think there's another question about, like in Cube, and that's a whole different parlay, but I just want to touch on it briefly. Whether you want to play a playstyle where every card is played or no is sort of a big thing. I think no. I think it's interesting to know the cards in there, and it's a limited pool, so there's a high chance it is in your opponent's deck if they play those colors, but you don't know for sure it's in there. Like I personally think that's a good thing. And I also really like sideboarding in Cube. So I want there to be cards left over that it's not like you get only the number of cards you need to make a deck. Hardly anyone does that in Cube, but you could make drafting that was focused on that. I really like sideboarding in Limited. I think it's interesting to be able to switch out like an entire deck, that type of weird sideboarding, or transform the deck with a sideboard. To me, that's a quite signature aspect of Limited and drafting, so I want to preserve that personally. So I thought that was interesting. Again, the article is called The Proper Way to Do 2-Player Cube Draft, and while it sounds somewhat pretentious in the title, I do not think it is pretentious. I think it is a thoughtful and well-explained way to draft. Whether you like it or not, the valuable thing about this is that the author has thoroughly explained why they're doing it that way. So it's interesting, even if it isn't something you'll enjoy, but I really liked it. Anyway, that's a long-term project for me. And a long-term project for you. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Vamper, I hope I covered things that you wanted covered adequately. I tried to talk a lot about everything, but I know there was also a lot of ramble about just being interested in the subject. Thanks for the request. Looking forward to the next one.